Hello and welcome to this IsleVote 21 meeting for the Isle of Wight County Council seat of Brading and St Helens. A brief word for the benefit of the public. IsleVote 21 has been formed with the sole purpose of enhancing democracy by providing an unbiased platform for candidates. We have no affiliations or funding, and no candidates are aware of what questions will be asked today, although a list of topics has been shared in advance to enable candidates to prepare. All 138 candidates in this year's election have been invited, either directly or via group or party leaders. So the following candidates have been invited to this meeting, and in attendance today we have Jonathan Bacon, and thank you, and we have John Graney representing the Lib Dems and Alex Buggy representing the Labour Party. Brian Tyndall of the Conservative Party was also invited to this meeting. And I'd like to thank you personally for participating in this exercise as we seek to enhance the democratic process here on the Isle of Wight and support our voters to be well informed and well engaged in the process leading up to the local elections. So candidates will be asked questions from our pool of questions, plus others that have been submitted by the public regarding island-wide issues. And candidates have been informed that there is a 2-minute limit on answers. So I will raise my hand as we approach that cutoff and request candidates to finish up promptly after that. Now, before we start questions, I'm going to give each candidate 2 minutes to give a personal statement. And due to the glories of Zoom, we have a random selection purely by how people are laid out on this call. So Alexander, if you are happy to go first and give us your personal statement. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, I'd like to start and thank IsleVote 21, as I'm sure the other candidates here, for giving us this platform, especially in this time. It's very unfortunate that we can't be there in person to do this in front of you, but I hope that you get as much from this as you can. As you say, my name is Alexander Buggy. I am the Labour Party candidate for Brading and St Helens. Just a little info on me. I moved to the island with my family when I was around the age of 7 and 8. I've grown up in the education system of the Isle of Wight. I'm always going to have a special place for the island in my heart. The main thing that made me run for this position was the true cruelty that I saw through the bringing in of austerity since the Conservative government has come into power. It has really driven the levels of poverty on the Isle of Wight to levels that have never been seen before in my lifetime anyway, being as young, the youthful age of 22 tomorrow, thankfully. One of the main reasons that I do feel as a young individual I need to be involved, because especially again on the island, a lot of young people must feel, and I'm fairly certain they feel, that their voices haven't been heard. It's very difficult for us to step into something that has always been dominated by what we would deem as the adult population. As you can see, the other two candidates here, I've read into you guys, I've known your work, you've both put in a lot of effort to bring the island to a better place that you believe is the direction to go, and I will always thank you. Everyone that has done this before me, I will always thank you, regardless of party political sides. I'm a current student at the University of Portsmouth. I'm studying a bachelor's in politics. I'm hoping to do a master's from distance in September. So this is something that I've always wanted to do since a very young age. I believe that hopefully coming from a young background that people can see that we need new blood, we need new ideas, we need fresh ideas. My ultimate goal is to show that young people are equally as important as anybody else in this society, and I hope that you see that from my statement and answers today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Thank you. All right, I'm going to move around clockwise and ask Jonathan Bacon to give us his statement.
I think your screen's set out differently to mine, but I'm very happy to take the next spot. Again, I thank you very much for inviting me, and I'd very much like to align myself with Alex's comments he made in introduction as well. I'm a little over 22. I've been on the island since I was 10. And some people will know I was an Isle of Wight councillor for 8 years, from 2019 to 2017. I lost my seat in 2017. On reflection, I'm very glad about that. I had a lot of personal issues to deal with at the time and cope with, and it's important to get your priorities right. However, I'm also glad for that time away from the council, as having observed it in operation over the last 4 years, I think for anyone who's been in the council during that time, it must have been a deeply depressing experience. We've really seen a shutdown of democracy with little or no true engagement with the public, or indeed many members of the council over the last few years. And the same has been found by many organisations and businesses. I've been the chair of the AONB, Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, for the last 4 years, and I've found a deeply cynical attitude within the council to many suggestions and proposals that have been made, if they're viewed as conflicting with council ideas, which at the moment usually seem to involve building lots of houses. This, combined with learning more about flat pack democracy, and I'll let people look that up, I won't go into a long-winded explanation, and indeed seeing moves in other areas of the country to create more open community-led government, have led me to seek to enter the fray again. I've also found great inspiration from the way local communities across the island have responded to the pandemic. A fantastic amount has been achieved by local groups, often working together, and all without any need for party politics. So I'm hoping that what we can see in the next 4 years is a move to a more grassroots, community-led agenda, leaving national politics at the door and bringing residents back into the system and rebuilding confidence in the system. Part of that process, however, will be to fundamentally change the council and restructure it so it can work in such a way, and also that it can work in a way that is sustainable, following the massive cuts we've seen over the last 10 years. If we do that, I think we can free up capacity and money to do positive things across the board. And I'd hope that would include the young people as well, and not just carry on maintaining an outdated bureaucratic machine. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you. Okay, John, can I hand the floor over to you? And I'm going to ask you to unmute, please. Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Just like the others, I've nothing to disagree with about what they say. They are laudable aims. We have different ways of going about things maybe, but just like Alex, I used to be 22, but that was 48 years ago. So I am pleased to see him here. I am pleased to see him taking this part. There are different ways of going about things, and that's what got me to stand. There is, for me, and having been on committees with Jonathan and other committees, and hearing government say things like, and it was actually said to a dear friend in London at a meeting, you're not an island, you're an estuarine district. You know, there are people in London who don't believe you can't ride your bicycle from Portsmouth to Ryde, but we'll see. What have I written down here? Yeah, again, restructuring the council. It's one of the things I've written on my blog about. It's the and on my leaflet, if anybody's had one shoved at them, it's the cabinet system. I think is wrong for this sort of government. When issues are discussed in the halls of power in Newport, they're only discussed by Conservatives. When they eventually come to the full council, they're all parcelled up and done. So the wise councils of experienced people of other parties have not been heard. That needs to change. The special status of the island needs to be recognised. Our dear MP, and I think he's good in many ways, he said, oh, look, I've got you lots of money for the railway, lots of money for the pier, lots of money, but he hasn't got the promised money from the government that the Conservative Party said they would send for the council to do the council's responsibilities with. One of the examples is If a social worker has to visit a child in care off the island, that's a couple of £100 in expenses. It's all very different being an island, and we need for it to be recognised.
Thank you, John. Thanks very much, everyone, for your opening statements. And we're going to proceed now to the questions from the IsleVote 21 Bank. We have 3 questions from the bank, and then we will move on to questions from the public. So I understand that it might be helpful to repeat the questions twice to give people a little bit of time to think through things. And I'm going to start this time with Jonathan and ask you this question first. Jonathan, can you suggest a new policy that the council could pursue on the island? Can you suggest a new policy that the council could pursue on the island?
Just one. I'm sure I could come up with lots. If people look at the Our Island website, you'll see we've got a full range of aims. I think the one I'll choose to mention here is regeneration of our high streets. We've seen, I drove through Newport the other day, and even though there were lots of people out following the change in lockdown rules, the high street was in a sad state. I mean, you can see that across the island. So I think we need to take special measures to get business working again on the island. We've got a small business-led economy. It's all very well bringing over big firms, opening up call centres and so on, but that's not, as I see John shaking his head and I agree with him, that's not the core of how the island works. What we should be doing is taking that space we've got in the high street, offering people business rate breaks and holidays so they can bring their businesses to those premises, get going, and get those businesses established and working and serving the island. And something I feel very strongly about to support that is parking in our towns as well. There are plenty of models around the country whereby, say, a couple of hours free parking in the town brings people into the town, brings people to those businesses you've encouraged to set up, and regenerates the town, supports those businesses, and shows people just what is going on in the island. There are lots of other facets to that as well. There's been a fascinating exercise in Wandsworth where the high street there was pedestrianised over weekends, sort of cafe culture created, and Northcote Road, I think it was called. And again, it has really caused that part of that town to blossom, with people being able to sit there in the street, enjoy local produce, and visit the local shops that have been established. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. John, can I ask you the same question to suggest a new policy that the council could pursue on the island?
It's like Jonathan, it's a small business. Again, I've written on my blog. Am I allowed to give a plug for my blog? johngraney.online, if you can look at it if you like. Parking, yes, but small business. The shop premises are large. They need to be divided up. We need a planning policy which is aimed at small business, where disused buildings can be converted for use by micro businesses and workshops, where shops can be divided into units that can be seen as separate rateable entities. If a lot of small businesses go together in a big old department store, then the place will pay rates at a high rate and they'll have to pay a part of it each. If the shop is divided into smaller units, where smaller businesses can get going, not only will you get a varied and interesting high street, but a lot of those single premises businesses will get single premises rate relief down to 0 or very near it, depending on the value of the premises. The car parking as well. The car parking, Lewis and Sussex, 70p for 2 hours. Andover, it's £1, Devizes is 70p, Newport's £1.70. Even the corporation car parks in the cities of Portsmouth and Southampton are cheaper than Newport. So do we assume by the high parking costs that there is really something worth going there for? I think not. So we need a regeneration policy that looks at what we've got and using it better, rather than looking at spaces and trying to fill them up. In the same way, some work is being done, and I've nagged council, and I've been in meetings and nagged people about this, with empty homes. Empty premises of all sorts, empty shops, empty homes, empty factories should be a priority over building new and covering a grass with concrete.
Thank you, John. Over to you, Alexander. A new policy.
Thank you. Yeah, and I echo the feelings of both of my colleagues here standing. It's regeneration. Regeneration is what we need. Small business is what has made this island thrive for so long. But I think what the other two here are forgetting is it's very good to be like, oh, this is what we want from the business, but how are we going to bring people into these businesses is what we need to focus on. And parking is the key. Parking, a Labour-led council, as we've said in our manifesto, which you can see on our website, we've said that for the first hour in council-owned car parks, it will be an hour free. Now, that in itself encourages more people to come from, say, the Morrison's car park in Newport, that I'm sure we're all guilty of parking and thinking it's free for 2 hours, myself included. Where they say Scarrett's Lane car park, you think, oh, actually, I'll park there if it's free for an hour and nip into the town. And what you do, you walk down all those local businesses, you think, oh, actually, I might get my loaf of bread from this bakery instead, or, oh, that looks quite interesting, I'll have a look in there. What we need is an easier way for island residents, especially, because we're the key here. We're the people that are going to be straight in there first that go, right, what do we want? We want to be proud of the island that we're on. We want to be giving people the ability to go out and say, look at this place, look what we can do with it. I've seen, especially down in Sandown High Street, you wander down there nowadays, it's boarded up shops, places are shut, obviously, of course, with the COVID restrictions, but even before then, it's a place that often I walk down and I feel sad. I feel sad for the potential that we're missing. And what we need is to bring people in and say, look what we've got, look what we can achieve. And I think with especially by also abolishing the post 6 p.m. Parking charges, which I think are something that definitely, I've seen both my colleagues there nodding, it's something that has to be looked into, because say a family goes out for a meal, they think, oh, do you know what, I'll drive, I'll park somewhere, it's free after 6 p.m. It encourages people to use local businesses, and I feel it's something very key.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, everyone. Okay, moving on to our next question. And John Graney, I'm going to ask you this one to start us off. How can residents become more confident and engaged in the council's decision-making process? How can residents become more confident and engaged in the council's decision-making process?
They've got to, I think, become interested in it for a start. That it does affect their lives, but it's got to be done in such a way that they know it's affecting their lives. Again, the idea of a cabinet of all the members of one party making all the basic decisions, I think is wrong. So more localization to parish level is good, as long as the parishes are supported in this and just don't have the responsibilities and the weight dumped on them and the extra expense. And then the parishes have to start looking at gaining money. That we have examples in Brading of the public toilets. Fine, the council will lease it to you for a minimal rent. And then because the council, the parish council, the town council now has 2 premises, they no longer qualify for rate relief, and you get charged rates on both. There's about £5,000 a year, I think, was something like that. So the parishes need to be supported. So more localism, proper localism, is necessary, I think. But then there are things that parishes can't do. Parishes can't do social services. Parishes can't do adult care. Parishes can't run a fire brigade or an ambulance service. There's got to be a proper division. Seeing the fire brigade now controlled by a mainland fire and rescue committee is not good for making the people feel that the Isle of Wight Council matters, that there is some local control. I know the police have been joined up with the mainland thing since 1924. I think we're used to that. I wonder how people felt at the time. Resources are always difficult. You could share resources, I'm sure, without giving away control. So I think it's got to be local to them. It's got to be relevant to them. And we need to let them know what we're doing.
Thank you, John. Over to you, Alexander. How can residents become more confident and engaged in the council's decision-making process?
I think the two key things that people need to recognise, especially us running for these seats, is people aren't interested and they don't care when they can't see what's going on. People need transparency and they need honesty. And those two words in politics are political kryptonite for many people. What we need to express, and I heard that there, John, I see you agree with me. What we need to express to people is we are put there by them. We are not put there for them. We're put there by them to make sure that they have the best standard of care that we can give them. And by doing that, that's when we work for them. We have to understand that the people that we represent are the people that put us there in the first place. Those are the people that deserve to know exactly what we're doing on their behalf. We don't work for party politics aside. Again, this isn't the point here. It's not, I don't work for some national level of, oh, this person wants me to do this. I work for the people that are going to vote me and put me in there. And I'm standing on a platform that I hope people can see is I'm trying to do my best for everyone. The transparency side of it is, if I do get elected, I pledge that everything I do in the council will be published on a website. It will be scrutinised by other people. I will more than welcome open forums to discuss decisions. This isn't I make the decision and you deal with it. This is I listen to you and you tell me what you want from me, and I take it away and I go, right, this is what I can do and this is what I'm going to do for you, such as speaking to locals. The traffic lights on the Mall by the primary school, people seem to jump those lights because it's too close to the junction. Kids can get hit. Those are the kind of things that need to be discussed, not, oh, business rates and tax exemptions. We need what people are going to focus on locally, and that's what matters.
Thank you, Alexander. Jonathan, confidence and engagement in the decision-making process.
I'm a little worried that the public are going to think we've all been sharing notes beforehand, because we are very much singing from similar, if not the same, hymn sheets. How can residents become more engaged in the decision-making process? I think the main thing is to actually be allowed into it. We've seen a real shutdown of democracy the last few years. There have been restrictions on questions in full council. There have been restrictions even on public involvement in local parishes. And it's quite frightening, and it frightens people away. It removes them from the system and it breeds distrust. So we want to see all measures possible to bring people back in. Involve them in meetings, make the public access proper. We can build on the Zoom meetings and so on that we've seen. That's actually got a lot of people involved in things they might not otherwise be in the last few months. We can look to community councils. That's a great initiative that's been used in other places to discuss and work through issues. Consultation on the island in recent years has been a joke. You get a public meeting, maybe 20 people turn up, you get a 40-minute presentation, 5 minutes of questions, everyone has an argument and nothing gets resolved and the council does what it wants anyway. You go through that process, but then once people have aired their views and their differences, start to have a real active discussion with people actually talking through the issues and working them through and coming to an agreed position. One way to involve people, a massive issue at the moment, is planning. I think we should be getting members of parish and town councils on the planning committees when there are decisions that involve their areas. Actually get them into the decision-making process. There's no reason why you can't do that. It should be done. We've got to support and work with the parishes. There are 33 town and parish councils on the island. It's the only county, I think, in England that is totally covered with town and parish councils. Use that amazing resource, work more closely with them, bring them into committees. I've used my time up, but I think we're pretty much all of a mind on this. There's a lot more that could be done.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you, everyone. Okay, on to our next question. What could the council do to inspire residents to take more pride in the island? Alexander, I'm going to ask you to kick us off with this one. What could the council do to inspire residents to take more pride in the island?
I think this is the key. Again, I think we're all probably going to be singing from the same hymn sheet. When you wander around the island, our main source of income, if we want to start with, is tourism. we need to attract people to the island to see what we can offer them. And as I say before, when I wander around places, I feel sad. And as a young person, I'm like, oh, I'm full of life, clearly, but wandering around, it feels sad. I'm not proud of where I live sometimes. And then people say, especially at university, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from the Isle of Wight. Oh, Rick, what's it like over there? Oh, it used to be good. Seems to be the phrase that I use a lot. And I don't even notice it sometimes. It's a level of regeneration, again, that we need. We need local businesses to be attractive again. We need to give them the ability to be attractive again. We need people to see the potential of what we can offer. If people look at the island and they see that the residents are fed up with where they're heading because of a council that is led by people that can't see the damage it's causing, then we have no hope. No one's going to invest here. No one's going to say, oh, do you know what? That small business over there, if we got involved in there, would this amount to something? They're going to say no, because people don't have the drive anymore. We have the perfect opportunity now that the COVID has given us to suddenly step back and go, actually, we can change so many things here and make this place so much better and make people want to come over and spend their money here and go, oh, actually, do you know what? I'm going to come back again. And I'm going to come back again next year and I'm going to bring my friends. That's what we need. We need people to come in and go, I recognize the potential this place has got and I want to be part of that.
Thank you, Alexander. Over to you, Jonathan. What could the council do to inspire residents to take more pride in the island?
Well, in part, I'd repeat my previous two answers and probably what everyone else has said up to now. But people do have pride in the island. That's why many of us live here, because it's a fantastic place. But I think what the council needs to do is to recognise what people actually value and why, when there are some bad bits and bad stuff going on, why people still stay here and they love it. And we need to, as I say, recognise those good things, build on them, support them, nourish them. We talked about small businesses. We talked about getting our towns back. You know, I can remember times when Ryde, Newport have been fantastic places to go to. Our environment, there's so much amazing stuff surrounding us, and we need to make sure it's supported. We've got a biosphere, we've got an AONB. We need to have planning rules that support those. As I said, small businesses, we've got world-class businesses here, and they need to be encouraged and supported, as I've said before. But one thing, and I'm possibly pinching a few of Alex's notes here, is our young people. I think if we get our young people to realise what a good place this is and make them want to stay here, because a lot of people, they do want to leave. If we work so much more with our youth and young people while they're growing up, while they're developing in their teenage years, and when they're looking for work, let's make sure that we're supporting our youngsters into work and into some of these fantastic businesses we've got here, where there could be amazing jobs for life, and own businesses that those young people could develop and nurture and run. And possibly we might get onto this later, but that would be potentially connected with a university on the island as well. I'll stop.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Excuse me.
Over to you, John. Islanders, pride in the island.
I've written down university. It is a way, I mean, there are modern ways of studying which don't involve going to Leeds and filling yourself up with beer twice. There are other ways to study, and there are ways it can be done on the island. I do think, though, that people should travel. I know my traveling years, I traveled for 10 years. I went to 30 countries. They are very character forming years, and for me anyway. The place I grew up in was a council estate. Can you imagine something a bit like Pan Estate with the size and shape of houses, but with 2 senior schools and 6 junior schools and 6 infant schools? It's a big place. So what we need is people to think of this place as home, to think of it as somewhere to come back to, We need for them to see the rest of the world and to bring what they learn here to run on the island. I don't think it's healthy just to say, oh, we can't do that because we're too small. Let's have a go at it. Let's do it. We can't do that because the ferries are too expensive. Well, that is a problem, but we can work on that. Scotland cured it. Why can't we? Why can't the ferries cost the same as they do in Scotland? Why does it cost 4 times the ferry fare to come over on Bank Holiday Monday? Why does it cost twice the ferry fare to stay one night? In Scotland, you pay a fare to go over and a fare to come back. It's the same fare. High days, holidays, Christmas Day or whatever, it's the same fare. So being able to draw from experiences off the island without beggaring yourself is part of what being proud of the island is. I mean, I think our island symbols are good, and I would admit, some people will hate me for this, to actually designing the Isle of Wight flag. Some people don't like it. Some people say it's the wrong colours. There you are.
And thank you everyone for answering questions from our IsleVote bank. Now I'm going to move on to a selection of questions from the public. We posted across social media and on our website. We shared a survey monkey and asked members of the public to raise their questions, and these are the results. So our first question is back to you, Jonathan. Our first question from the public. What can be done to improve educational aspiration for residents of all ages? What can be done to improve educational aspiration for residents of all ages?
These are things that very much link in with what we've just been talking about. I think there'll be more aspiration if people can have a clearer vision of the future that they could lead to. Again, I might get kicked for this, but I think there are some areas where the view is, well, if you stay on the island, you're working in hospitality, you'll have a summer job, you'll struggle through the winter. We need to show people that there is so much more that they could be doing and can be doing on the island, but also that things like university, higher education, further education, they are not a dream, which some people seem to think they are. That's maybe a slightly generational thing. It certainly was a view that my parents had and I got away from. But if you had access to university courses and so on the island, well, you do. We've got Platform 1 and they do degree level courses there, which is the university. If there's more access to that sort of thing, people can see that they can use their education, take it forward and do amazing things, start their own businesses, get involved in high tech, really skilled engineering work, and so on. I think that's what will help the system. Show that there is something to aspire to, and you will create aspiration.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Over to you, John. What can be done to improve educational aspiration for residents of all ages?
It's been said, but already there are ways of studying now, after this wretched pandemic. There are ways of studying that are open to us without leaving the island. Ambition is not a bad thing, but ambition to better yourself. I think where I grew up, and I suffered a bit from this in my youth. I was not expected to do anything. I was not expected. When I told people I'd join the Navy, they said, "Oh, I can't wait to see you in a sort of milk churn lid hat and and a sailorman's blue collar." No, I joined the Navy. I went to Dartmouth. I went to Dartmouth Britannia Royal Naval College because a kid from the Council Estate gets to do that. Years later at university, professor said to me, I was President of Law Society, I wanted to have the dinner in black tie. Law Society dinner in black tie. Now, Sussex University didn't go down very well. And the professor said, look, we'll democratize you one day. Listen, for me, the kid from the Council Estate wears a black tie. That's democracy. And so that's why I want everybody to think, what do I want to do? Let's go and do it. let's go and get a place in university. Let's go and get a place in further education college. Let's go and get the paperwork. I'm sitting here in my book-lined study. I suppose I dreamed about this when I was 15. And now I've got all these books. I mainly use this thing and I don't look in the books. But I'd say to everybody, anybody, go out there and do it. Don't let. I used to nag one of our trainees when I was working here, and I shan't say who it was, but they didn't want to go in further education because they didn't want to leave the island to do it. All right, if we can get people to study on the island, all well and good. But no, I think you should reach for your horizons.
Thank you, John. Over to you, Alexander. Improving educational aspiration for residents of all ages.
Thank you. The one thing that I think we've all neglected to touch on, but I will now, is vocational courses. University is not the only option that we should be offering young people. I myself have gone purely because I was told that's what I should do. They were like, oh, you do your A-levels and you go to university. And I think, what about other people that say, want to work with their hands, want to work with tools, want to work in local industry? You're like, they're not any less of an individual than I am. Those are the people that we rely on to keep society running. Those are the people that if I get an office one day, hopefully, that if my pipes start leaking, those are the people I'm going to rely on. Those are the foundation of people that we need. That's, a lot of people seem to see university as some aspiration of, oh, you're going to be so, life's going to be a mate. You go to university, you get everything you want. You don't. University and higher education is not the only way we should be pushing people, especially young people. We should go, whatever you want to do with your life is up to you. We need to give them every single opportunity to do every single thing that they want to do. It's people like my parents always say to me, I never got the option to do what you do now, and I'm jealous. I'm like, why are you jealous? Like, was this not around? They went, it was around, we were never offered it. What we need to do is show people what they can do. Show people that every bit of potential they've got should be tapped into, especially stuff like we don't have the university on the island that's been mentioned by my colleagues here. We don't have to have a university-based campus here to study this. As I say myself, I'm doing a master's in international relations from distance learning. Distance learning needs to be looked into, especially for the island. For universities and places that go, oh, you'd like to do this course? Well, show us your qualifications, what you've got from high school, and we'll see what we can do with you. Those are the options we need to go down. To see what people can do, I think the main aim for this is to see what people want to do and go, whatever you want to do as an individual, that's your world, and I 100% back you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, everyone. Our next question is about the volunteer sector, and I'm going to ask John to take the first answer on this. The volunteer sector carries a great deal of weight on the island, especially during the COVID crisis, to the great relief of taxpayer-funded services. Can you suggest ways in which the council can support this sector?
I suppose so. I hadn't thought of it. I didn't see these questions, but there you are. Voluntary sector is important. I mean, all the parish councils are voluntary. All those parish councils, those 33 parish councils, average of 8 to 10 councils in each one, they're all doing it for the community. There's nothing in it for them. Other voluntary workers are the same. The council could help with premises. I'm sure they could help with training as well. There are things that a voluntary organisation, a large voluntary organisation, like for instance, St John's, can do with training its people and with helping out with insurance and things like that. But the smaller, the voluntary organisations that exist only on the island could do with some sort of help with central training, maybe with insurance, maybe with premises. There are ways that a council can help the voluntary sector without taking them over and running the show for them. There's been great work done during this pandemic by people who weren't voluntary workers before, people who've done Meals on Wheels, people who have done visiting and all sorts. And when this thing is over, and we hope it soon will be, are we going to lose all those willing people, or are we going to encourage them to carry on with the sort of thing they can do for their community. And that makes them part of their community. I don't think they're looking for recognition. I don't think they're looking for medals or certificates or big nights out, but a bit of help with some of their expenditure, some of their premises, some of their training. That might go towards it.
Thank you, John. Over to you, Alexander. How can the council support the volunteer sector on the island?
First of all, I echo John's thoughts on these people, these volunteers. They do it not out of recognition, they do it out of purely the good of their heart. And I think all three of us here especially can say a massive thank you to everyone that's worked through this crisis, especially with COVID. It's not something that a lot of people would want to do. It's not something that a lot of these people thought they ever would do. But when the time got called on them to come up and do it, they did it with no hesitation. And for everyone that's ever done that, I'm sure all three of us again here can say thank you. The least the council can do is recognise what these people have done, to turn around and go, yes, you are the people that kept a lot of this community together when sometimes this council have let them down. The basic recognition of these people is what they deserve. They deserve a hell of a lot more though. Like, as you say, John, subsidies for training for such things like St John's. There's so many avenues that these people can go down that oh, bear with me, I've got a technical problem.
Don't touch the switches.
We can still hear you, Alexander.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, sorry about that. It's somebody messing with my Wi-Fi. What a standard thing. Anyway, where was I? Yes, volunteering centres. These people deserve subsidies. This is not, big businesses don't deserve these subsidies that they get from tax break and tax relief. The volunteer sector are the people that should be getting tax relief, that should be getting premises paid for them. These are the people that when you turn for your hour in need are always going to be there regardless. These are good people at the heart of our communities that at the very least deserve every little thing we can give them. And as a council, as we say, we should give them subsidies for places to work, subsidies for equipment that they use, and anything that is within reason that they can ask for. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Over to you, Jonathan. Ways in which the council can support the volunteer sector.
Improve the Wi-Fi. No. One thing that has troubled me a little, Alex talks about council recognition of what volunteers have done. I've seen the council trying to take credit for some things that volunteers have done, and the council have been pretty much behind the game with. So, but maybe we'll leave that one aside. We need a little bit of controversy this afternoon, don't we? But yeah, when the pandemic kicked in, about 27 groups set up within a week or so of it being realised something was needed. And that was all done by those groups. That's what I was talking about earlier, about there just being this ability that the public have to do things when they're engaged. And we've seen that so much in the pandemic. Coming back to your question, I think there is a tension here in the volunteer sector, because we do have now a lot of things being done by volunteers because it's the only way we'll get them done. They've been dumped by the council over the years. I don't know if we can ever reverse that. It would be nice to, but it's maybe not the best situation to be discussing how we support volunteers for things that perhaps really shouldn't be done by volunteers. But I've got quite a few links to the volunteer sector through things like Bembridge Library, the Law Centre, and some other trusts I'm involved in. We've got a great body, Community Action Isle of Wight, that supports a lot of what goes on in the voluntary sector. But it comes down to really what John and Alex are saying, that bodies like that, they need that practical support. Premises, training, insurance is a massive thing for a lot of voluntary organisations. Websites and so on. If we give that practical backup, then these things can be done. I mentioned the COVID support groups. The one I'm involved in, St Helens, we would have struggled if we weren't lucky to have someone who works in tech come on board, set up a website, set up a phone line, and that got us going, and we worked very successfully as a result. But if we can get support from the council, so where we need voluntary groups, they can get that sort of practical underpinning support, whether it be technical training or just say somewhere to actually base themselves, then if we have to have a voluntary sector, that will help that voluntary sector flourish.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you, everyone. And at the risks of putting you on the spot once again, Jonathan, are you happy to take on our next question? I'd like to ask.
Depends what it is.
I'd like to ask all of you, thinking specifically about your kind of hyper-local area, knowing your local community as you do, what local issue would you like to address that you know is of concern to residents?
Well, we're split across two areas in this ward, which are quite distinct. We have Brading Town and we have St Helens Village. And I think the issues in both are very different. Walking around the last few days, talking to people in a COVID secure way, I should stress, I think the main concern in Brading at the moment seems to be traffic. There's been a long-standing issue with the high street and speeds and just bad driving in the high street. But I think concerns are stretching more widely around the town now to some of the roads such as Racks Road, where you're getting a lot of random parking, and it's causing issues for access for emergency vehicles and even the rubbish trucks and so on, actually being able to do their jobs. And I'm scared that one day we're going to get a fire or something and the fire service won't be able to get there because someone has parked in a silly place and so on. So I think traffic, speed, parking control are an issue for Brading. In St Helens, we do have a massive issue with parking. I'm sitting here looking out of my front window at the green now. We are surrounded by cars. When I was here 40 years ago, moved to the village, you didn't see that many cars. Well, you saw a few. I mean, it's not the Victorian era, for goodness sake, but you do have an issue with parking in St Helens. But I think more widely, there are issues with just maintaining the village green in St Helens. That's a piece of common land. It's long been something I've wanted to maintain and support. And I think we need to make sure that there's proper control and management of that. It's currently managed by the Isle of Wight Council and it's not managed well. I also think we want to make sure we look after our seafront and our beach. We have a car park down there that the parish council could perhaps take on and look after a lot better than it is at the moment. And that's something that gives funding also to support things like maintaining the green and keeping the village together. And my time's up. Thank
you, Jonathan. Over to you, John. A local issue that you'd like to address?
Well, two really. The road safety and traffic, yes, I'm completely with Jonathan on that. I don't live in the high street, I live just off the high street, but I can hear the vehicles whizzing down there. And I think you're either doing that in first gear or you're doing it in fourth at well over the 20-mile-an-hour limit. The weird thing is that the main road, the A203, whatever, 30, whatever, is a 20-mile-an-hour limit. And the little tiny side roads, like the one I live on, are a 30-mile-an-hour limit, which some drivers think, oh, 30 limit means I can drive at 45. And it's like the crests to run out here sometimes. We tried to get a pharmacy to open up in Brading. We were told this was not allowed. The health service will not give a license to a farm. There was a premises, there was a pharmacist who wanted to open, but the pharmacy was not to be allowed because we're close to other places. Now, if you go from, suppose you've got two kids under school age or one off school because they're not very well, you go to the doctors, you get a prescription, or the doctor comes and sees you a prescription, you have to go to the pharmacy to get your first one. Now, Brading to the nearest pharmacy for an adult and two kids is a £14 round trip. When we told this to the health service, said, why can't you walk to Tesco's pharmacy? It's less than 2 miles. You want to try that with a toddler and on reins and a buggy up the road to Tesco's? You're welcome. I don't want to watch it. The other thing is housing. I've been going around shoving leaflets through doors. I've been wasting a lot of my time. I stopped at a house the other day in St Helens, and in fact several houses. One particular one I remember had a glass porch, and there were some life jackets hanging on the wall, and some waterproof jackets, and 4 months post in the bottom of the glass porch, including, from what I could see, probably Christmas cards as well. There are houses being used for the wrong purpose when people are living in the most appalling crush elsewhere.
Thank you, John. Over to you, Alexander, a local issue.
As we were saying earlier, I think we've all got the same hymn sheet here, don't we? Road traffic will always be an issue that will be key. Those roads are dangerous when it comes down to, as somebody that works in the hospitality industry, I've driven through Brading many a time, especially at sort of midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I've been doing 20 through the 20, and someone's gone round me doing 40, going down that little bypass by the Bugle where buses have to wait. And you think, if somebody's coming up there in another car, you're going to cause a lot of damage to places and people's lives. That definitely needs to be looked into, and it will be. The other one, as John said, pharmacies, GPs. What does Brading have that's left now that hasn't been already cut away? The health service, we need to look at that. As we say, the closest one they've got pharmacy-wise is Tesco. What if people that say, as we say, people that have a family, but they might only have a single parent living in the household, and say they have to go to the pharmacy to pick up a prescription, but they don't have a car? They think, oh, I've got to get back in time to have the kids back from school. I've got to make sure that they're ready for this. And they're like, they've got to dedicate so much time in their day to go somewhere that is a basic need for them. That's something that has to be addressed, especially now when we look at the COVID rules and the COVID impact that it's had on the NHS. And one, speaking to a local that was very adamant on this, parking when it comes to school times. It might not seem this to everybody, but it's the small things that matter when it comes down to parking at school. You think, oh, I've got to pick my kids up in time. I've got to get there. Oh, I've got to make sure I'm not flustered. That person can feel their mental health deteriorate when all they're thinking about is, I've got to get my kids back from school. Oh, where am I going to park? What am I going to do? I'm wasting all this time. That whole pressure can be alleviated from people's lives if we just look at what we can do to fix that. We need to focus on what actually is going to impact people's lives for the better, that we can do as quickly as possible, and to make sure that these people can see that we're actually doing what they want. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, everyone. So we are running close to the end of this evening's meeting. So I'm going to invite everyone to give a short closing statement and or reflect on this evening's proceedings. And if I can invite you, John, to start us off. Thank you.
Well, I'd say, going back to what we've been talking about, road safety is important. The pharmacy issue will not go away. Well, you know, the bus fares are silly, the ferry fares are silly. The empty houses being used for the wrong purpose. Somebody wants to build four-bedroom executive houses somewhere, and they say, well, they can't possibly fit in any social housing there. All right, build it somewhere else then. Say, you want this building permission? You can have it. You just have to build 2 houses somewhere else and hand them over to the housing association. There needs to be some control on houses that are built for family occupation being used for 2 weeks in a year for summer holidays. I mean, I'm not talking about these chalets and things on the holiday parks. I'm talking about a house in the street near where you live, which is just not used, and we all know about them. There are 1,622 unused properties. These are not holiday homes. These are not second homes. These are empty, unused homes on the Isle of Wight, of which less than 500 fit the council's target criteria to be brought back into use. The others are either exempt council tax or they are less than 6 months empty. Houses over 6 months empty, there's still 400. Imagine Brading was completely unoccupied. The entire parish was empty. That's about 1,622 houses, a ghost town in the middle of the Isle of Wight. And there are people living in the woods. I've seen the smoke in the mornings. There are people who are living in flats in Sandown in the most cramped conditions. When you see kids at the church hall or in Tesco's, little toddlers running and screaming with their arms out, they're not badly behaved. They're just enjoying being able to move. Housing, we've got to do something about.
Thank you very much, John. Alexander, closing statement.
Yeah, thank you. I think all the points that we've all raised, none of us can argue they're all important, but it comes down to priority. And what we have to prioritise, I feel, especially as a young person, is the children. They're the future of what we've got. Those are the people that we need to show that we care. And as far as I remember, when I was growing up, a lot of people just thought, oh, you can't vote, you don't matter. You think, no, I remember those people. I remember those people telling me, and some of them are still on the council to this day. I remember you turning around going, oh, there's not really much of a point. You can't vote, can you? Well, I can in 5 years, I can in 4 years. And then it turns out, and I'm there going, well, I'm not going to vote for you, am I? It's really sad the way that these, especially the Conservatives on the council, have treated families and young people. It was in 2018, I had a look, there were 7,600 children in poverty on the Isle of Wight. And I looked at that and I was like, that can't be right. Looked up again, it was. And then the next year that went up by 2,000. And you think, those are families that are struggling to provide for children. People need to wake up and see that even our children are coming into a world that we can't provide for them because of the cuts that we've received from especially the Conservatives. And I feel that eventually people should see that these children, these families need to be put first. They need to be the people that we think about because they're the future of our communities. Those are the people that hold us together. And I hope that a lot of people can see that that's what I'm trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to do something John did earlier and plug an internet resource, ourislandiw.com, and also the Our Island Facebook page. You can find out a lot more there about what we're proposing, things like ferry regulation, and something we haven't really talked about today, which is a shame, which is planning. John's touched on it there, but it's an island-wide issue with inappropriate developments, and lots of stuff being built or trying to be built that simply doesn't serve the local market, failing to actually restore our built heritage as well. There's so much that needs to be done in that arena. We also talk on the website about young people, and I agree so much with all Alex's points. One thing we would like to see is that every council decision that is made has to consider the effect of that decision on future generations. I think we just need to focus on our young people in everything we do, not just selectively, but in everything. So thank you for this opportunity. It's been great. I think local politics should be about connecting people with people and not about putting up barriers to engagement and involvement. I'm hoping that as many candidates as possible are going to participate in these meetings. I think anyone who doesn't is deeply cynical. I think it's often a measure of an individual or organisation that if they don't participate in something they can't control, and they can't control the way they're viewed or questioned, then it's because there's something wrong and something they're trying to hide. I hope the next 4 years of the council, whoever gets in, are going to be about openness, engagement and involvement of the community, and hopefully working together. That's going to be key. And actually working together rather than just claiming you are, which I think we've seen too much of. I think such an approach locally at a micro level has got us through the pandemic. And if that's allowed to blossom and flourish and be nurtured in County Hall, I think we can achieve great things for the island to help it recover, rebuild and go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan Bacon, John Graney and Alexander Buggy. I really appreciate your open, willing participation this evening. And it's been a pleasure to be able to listen to all of you and your information and your thoughts about our beautiful Isle of Wight. So thank you very much for taking part.